Just confirming that y'all can see my first slide and only my first slide. Need to move some stuff around so I can see the chat. There we go. Give it one more minute. I'm going to be taking a little bit of a different tact. This is more of an inspirational talk based on my experience in the workplace and in my career journey and just, you know, generally in this life. So welcome. Congrats on making it to the last presentation of the day. If you have any questions at all during the course of this presentation, feel free to shout them out or add them to the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on it. If you shout, that's totally fine. I'll just take a pause and we'll chat. Oh, and thank you, Cindy. Yes. I'm a chronic volunteer as well. I got to that in a roundabout, not intentional way. So this is an interesting topic for me to share with y'all. So I'm Spangler. I'm a tech writer at Magento, an Adobe company. I'm also a co-organizer of the Write the Docs Austin meetup group, which I really love doing. I want to talk to you about burnout, which is probably something that most of us are probably all too familiar with. Maybe not, maybe y'all have experienced it. I also have a potential remedy for those feelings of burnout that you may not have tried yet, and that is volunteering. So at the beginning of my volunteer journey, I didn't yet know that I would become dependent on volunteering. I didn't know that I'd be an advocate for it or that I would find my way through various nonprofits and organizations while serving my community. Up until recently, I hadn't even put 2 and 2 together to figure out why I was craving volunteer work and why I'd made it such a regular part of my life. I felt inspired to talk to more people about volunteering when I realized the impact it's had on me. As a self-admitted to-do lister and type A person, my drive to accomplish things to completion and to be timely at all costs has really caused me a lot of exasperation and stress. I'll share with you both my personal volunteer experiences and some proven statistics and methods for alleviating those feelings of burnout with volunteering. So last fall, I got an award of sorts for helping a local nonprofit obtain a grant from Adobe. My friend works with a nonprofit, as you can see here, Austin Youth River Watch, which combines peer mentoring with intensive environmental education to empower youth through nature-based and service learning programs. Basically, they're awesome. They work with youth and they're a really great organization. The $20,000 grant that they received is small change for Adobe, the company I work for, but it really goes a long way for a local nonprofit. I didn't even do much to help them get the grant. I mean, I merely alerted them to the opportunity. I participated in the review board for assessing which nonprofits our Austin Adobe office would support, and I put in a good word, and voila, they got the grant. Apparently, they appreciated it so much that they gave me and Adobe their highest annual award. So I went to an award ceremony and a benefit to receive that award on behalf of my company. It was a really nice pat on the back for something that I didn't even perceive to be volunteering at the time. But what I learned was that sometimes you don't have to do a lot to make a big difference for yourself or for others. So I'm looking at the chat. Stacy, totally. Volunteering during COVID-19 is therapy for sure. I feel that. So this isn't Salt Lake Barbecue, but this is it's a nice little space right in downtown Austin, the Waterloo Greenway that hosts public events. All right. So, how many of you have experienced burnout due to your work or personal life? And you can virtually raise your hand or add your response in the chat if you'd like. Your burnout may have taken the form of general disillusionment, work stress, mental or physical fatigue, detachment, maybe even overwhelming cynicism or feelings of inadequacy. These are all normal feelings when it comes to burnout. What exactly is burnout, though? It's a special type of work-related stress, a state of physical or emotional exhaustion that involves a sense of reduced accomplishment and a loss of personal identity. It's a really sucky feeling. It's not a medical diagnosis, but some experts think that other conditions like depression are behind burnout. Research suggests that many people who've experienced symptoms of burnout don't believe their jobs are actually the main cause. But whatever the cause is, job burnout can affect your physical and your mental health. As based on the responses in the chat, many of you identify with. If you said yes to that burnout question, you are not alone. I really want to shout this from the rooftops. We're in this together. You know, burnout is unfortunately a very common malady, especially in the tech, education, and medical industries. 77% of professionals have experienced burnout at their current job. That's really an astronomical number. That means that 3/4 of your current team at work is experiencing or has previously experienced some form of burnout. So if you have experienced burnout, did you find ways to remedy it? You can add this in the chat or shout it out. Maybe you quit your job or started running, learned a new non-work related skill, or just unplugged from your devices after work every day. Did it work though? Did your burnout go away? You know, I'm willing to bet your efforts, like mine, produce mixed or temporary results. Stacy, I see. Yeah, you're going through this. Yeah, totally. It's tough, especially with the stay-at-home orders, the isolation. It can produce some really weird feelings. When you talk to people about burnout, they tell you to dive into self-care. It's the touted cure-all, that ails you. Exercise, meditate, eat well, get good sleep, do a face mask and a mani-pedi, get creative with a new artistic hobby. People love to tell you this stuff. And that advice is well-meaning, and those methods do help a little bit until they don't, and then you're right back in that place again. It's the place of not feeling okay or good enough or fulfilled, and definitely not feeling energized. Another thing about burnout, it's a real creeper. Before you even know what's happening, it can render you completely useless. You really start to feel cynical about everything. You're super critical of others' work. Maybe you're snapping at people and you're feeling irritable or annoyed. This can extend, to work and to home life. Nothing you do at work seems to matter, and you're just unsatisfied with work. You might even feel exhausted, or you're experiencing stomach issues or migraines. Does this sound familiar? I mean, it sure does to me. If you've been spinning your wheels, just trying every good practice in the book, and you still feel like you're struggling with feelings of burnout, I'm going to suggest that you try volunteering. Winston Churchill said, "You make a living by what you get, you make a life by what you give." And so far, I have found this adage to be true, at least for me. To prevent or remedy stress and burnout at work or in your professional or your personal life, invest in your community and yourself by volunteering. Because believe it or not, volunteering is not solely a selfless act. You reap the benefits of volunteering tenfold. And to be honest, there's nothing wrong with being a little selfish when it comes to staying sane in this world, especially now. Simply volunteering a bit of your time seems like a fix too good to be true. And it may not work the same way for every single person, but I have yet to meet a regular volunteer who regrets doing it or says it doesn't help them in some way. So I know you're probably all wondering, how can volunteering actually help me with these feelings of burnout, disillusionment, disenchantment, feeling stuck. Sometimes it can manifest itself as feeling trapped, like in the most repetitive Ferris wheel of your life. It's like you're stuck in a rut that you just can't find your way out of. When things feel this way, dive into volunteering to get unstuck. Trying something new can really give you a new challenge. It can spark that needed inspiration, illuminate a skill or strength you didn't even know you had. So a little personal story. I have the best neighbors in my neighborhood and a really active community. During our neighborhood get-togethers, I kept hearing from people they wanted a community event, a place where we could all hang out, get to know each other, and enjoy this little slice of Austin. And we versus with another resident, and we formed the neighborhood social committee. Together with a couple of additional volunteers, we put on a neighborhood-wide block party, which is now 3 years running. Turns out I'm pretty good at planning social events and convincing people to join in the fun. It's been a lot of work, but the process showed me that I have a lot of strengths I was actually unaware of and that are super useful in my life. By the way, that block party has been a raging success. The first block party, we had like 150 people attend, and I was like, whoa. Gandhi said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Based on my experience volunteering the last several years, this definitely rings true for me. When I felt lost, it really helped to have this greater purpose, a very simple task at hand to focus on. Sometimes we're so stressed and overloaded that our brain just becomes less productive. We're not able to knock those to-do items off our list. Give your work brain a rest. Focus your skills and your efforts on helping others. Redirecting your attention and spending that mental or physical energy on serving your community really helps reset your senses, helps you get a clear head, gives you that fresh perspective that you need. Now time for a little stats. 94% of volunteers say that it improves their mood. 76% say that it makes them feel healthier. 80% of volunteers say that volunteering enables them to have better control over their mental health. These percentages are really high and really positive. So another personal story, I really love my job. I'm constantly learning. I have great teammates. Shout out to Margaret, who's on the call. And I get to write for a living, which for me is a dream. But that doesn't stop the software development industry from being really hard to navigate sometimes. My job is fast-paced, and I've got my hands in a lot of pies. Sometimes it really feels overwhelming and anxiety-inducing. I really needed a way to use my abilities to help others while taking my mind off my work for a change. So when the opportunity came up to be a mentor to a current Austin Community College student, I jumped at the chance. I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of people who helped guide me along my tech writing journey, and it feels really good to help someone else on their journey in return. I'm sure a lot of you have had a similar experience where there were mentors or people kind of helping to guide your path. If you feel like there must be something a little bit more to life, you're unsatisfied, maybe you're perpetually unfulfilled at your job, try savoring your community. Putting others before yourself, even if it's just for an hour a week, helps you balance out those uneasy feelings in your head. To be honest, it feels really good to give back, and the more you do it, the better you feel. It's that selfish versus selfless thing. So with volunteering, life no longer feels like this boring cycle with no change in sight. You really begin to look forward to volunteering your time and using the powers that you already have for good. When I was just starting out in tech writing, I felt like I should be spending my time improving my craft, making career-related progress. Even as I worked on my job skills on my free time after work, I kept trying to fill this hole in my life that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I didn't really understand it. Then I heard about this local nonprofit, Keep Austin Fed. They rescue food that would normally be thrown out by restaurants and grocery stores, and they redistribute it to organizations and people in need. So helping people who need the most basic of things, like food, that was really something I could get behind, an idea that I really latched onto. Interacting with the devoted staff and volunteers there gave me a whole new view on volunteering in the nonprofit world. I suddenly had a cause to support that I felt really good about, and it was outside of my normal everyday sphere. So it gave me that vacation from work that I really needed. As we all know, life can throw a lot of curveballs at you. When the proverbial shit hits the fan and you're forced to reckon with those factors outside of your control, it can leave you reeling, feeling like things are out of control. You want to find aspects of your life you can control. And when changes really knock that wind out of you, try exploring new volunteer opportunities to find that purpose. Opening yourself up to those new feelings and experiences, it can really surprise you in ways you don't expect. So 96% of people say that volunteering enriches their sense of purpose. That's like an immensely overwhelming percentage. The stats don't lie. Volunteering is a boon. It's for yourself and for your community. So you can, shout out or maybe put it in chat, but how many of you have experienced being a regular volunteer? I'm curious. I'm kind of taking an informal poll. Cool, Laura, great. Awesome. Well, y'all are cool. After being laid off for the second time, after being laid off from my previous job as well, I felt completely lost. Just a couple of years prior, I had gone back to school to learn technical writing before switching careers to tech writing from marketing. I was still new to tech writing, and now I was back to floundering and searching, trying to figure out what to do next. It just felt like I'd made progress only to take 5 steps back again. So I started using 2 lunchtimes a week to deliver food to seniors in my neighborhood for Meals on Wheels. I was really just doing it to fill the time I wasn't already devoting to interviewing for jobs and trying to find a new gig. But what I got in return was friendship, a sense of purpose, more inspiration than I bargained for. Meals on Wheels is really what kind of convinced me that being a volunteer might just save me from myself. It's really easy to let those thoughts and worries of work dominate our free time. But this is far more damaging than helpful. If we're not present outside of work, we let one aspect of our life, namely work, take over all other aspects. Through focusing on helping others and shifting your thoughts to something completely unrelated to work, you can break that repetitive work cycle that's so damaging. At the end of the day, do you ever feel wound up about your pending projects or deadlines or quarterly goals, mulling over what the next day will bring? I sure have. I still do sometimes. I try to break that cycle. It's difficult. But being in this state leaves you little mental energy to actually take care of yourself in ways that fulfill you and make you feel good. It can feel like you're held captive in this life loop, questioning the validity of what you work on every day. Is this important? Does it matter? My first tech writing job was super overwhelming. I wasn't used to the profession or to working in tech. And I was the first and only tech writer that company ever hired. I really had my work cut out for me. So I was frustrated at work. I was crying when I got home. It was just the mental stress, the monotony of feeling out of my depth constantly every day. I needed something to be a counterpart to those negative feelings. As a writer of sorts for several years, I chose to volunteer for an organization that provides free writing workshops to students. They're called Austin Batcave. So working collaboratively with other writers to help kids who were often underprivileged or economically challenged find their voice and prepare for their future was a salve for my frazzled nerves. It taught me a lot as well. It's been a really, really gratifying experience. My volunteer shifts became a time when I could switch off my analytical work brain and leave those worries behind. When I'm in the service of others, my intentions shift. My perspective on what's important morphs and widens. I feel an internal sense of softening that's almost meditative. I have a specific purpose. The people or the animals I'm serving have a specific need. And my only job is to use the skills that I have to fulfill that need, selflessly and willingly. The simplicity of it all just allows me to set aside the hustle and bustle of my brain a bit. I'll just pause here to make sure no one has any questions. I see a lot of conversation, which is really awesome. It seems like y'all are great volunteers and a lot of you do it regularly.
So this is Stacy. I have a question. I just was seeing it or observing it in the chat. So some of us are looking for volunteer opportunities and others they're on the other end where they're burned out from volunteering. So what's your advice on balancing?
Yeah, so, I've had a similar experience because I'm someone who's really hard on myself, right? A lot of people struggle with this. And so that extended to my volunteer experiences, which is really unfortunate because I was volunteering to help myself. And in doing that, I was creating more stress, right? And so actually, let's see, at the end of this last year, I finally got to a point where I was dreading planning the block party for my neighborhood. And I was like, what is happening? This is so weird. And then I really, because I'm a to-do lister and I'm a list maker, I took to pen and paper and I wrote down everything, all my commitments basically. And when I did that, I was like, whoa, okay, well, based on this, it's really evident why I'm stressed. I've got too much on my plate. And so, I really had to make some hard decisions because I'm a perpetual overcommitter. I want to be involved. I want to be the group leader. I want to make things happen and affect change. And I had to make a choice. And so I knocked a couple of things off my list and I talked to those organizations and I said, you know what? I'm really sorry, but I need to take a break for now. It's just, I don't feel good about it anymore. This isn't helping me. This is hurting me. So I need time to reset. And when I'm ready to come back, I'll let you know. And I was dreading those conversations like so much. But after they were over, I felt so much better. And I was able to apply time to the volunteering opportunities that I kept on my plate, better and more fruitfully. And so I started feeling like volunteering was doing its job for me again. It was making me feel good. It was helping me to, suss out all of the fluff, if that makes sense. So, my really only recommendation based on my experience is to take stock. Where are you? And if you've got too much going on, then shut some stuff off your plate. We're all here trying to survive. Nobody's going to put you in jail because you're not doing 5 volunteer gigs. Does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I have a question from Cindy here. How would you recommend dealing with burnout because of disrespect or hypercriticism from the people you're trying to help, whether at work or volunteering? So yeah, I think those two, work and volunteering, are going to be two different conversations because you get paid to be at work, so you have a little bit more on the line there. With volunteering, what I found is, for the most part, the organizations you're volunteering with and the people that are there volunteering are really great. They're a community of like-minded people. They have a same cause that's important to them. They want to be there with you. On the flip side of that, I have been volunteering for organizations where they got to be sort of like a Mean Girls Club, if you get that reference, cliquey, right? And where it makes you feel bad or you feel like you're not doing enough. Yeah, how I deal with that is if I'm able to shout it out and continue on with the volunteering, I do. If I'm not, I talk to the volunteer manager or someone who's in charge of that and say, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. This is where I'm at. I'm feeling disrespect and people are being critical of my work and I'm just here volunteering my time like you are. What's the problem? Is this something that you can help me with? But this kind of harkens back to the previous question. If it's not working for you and you've gone down those avenues, then it's in your best interest and it's your responsibility to step away. And that's all you can do. If you've taken the appropriate channels, you've done some self-reflection, you've talked to people that could potentially help you, and it doesn't change, and you feel bad enough about it that it's just ruining stuff for you, you got to take a hike. It's just not worth it. Just not worth it. Cindy, does that help or answer your question at all? Okay, great. These are great questions. So volunteering to serve my community every week began to help me combat the stress and burnout I was feeling at work. I started shelving this worrisome thoughts earlier and instead started looking forward to walking the dogs at Austin Pets Alive or facilitating a social meetup with my local Right the Dogs meetup group. It really helped me set the really crappy stuff that I was feeling about work aside, which is super important. When we get stuck in that routine of our everyday jobs and life, it can feel like nothing we're doing really makes an impact. What are we working towards? Does what we do even matter? And for me, nothing cures that feeling more than volunteering for someone or something like a dog or a cat that needs you. You can immediately see the impact you're making on those you help. There's no release cycle. There's no publication date or deadline on helping others. You go, you dig in, and you see the results in their faces. I mean, look at these faces. These are happy dogs. Their smiles and seeing the progress as I work with them brings a boatload of happiness to my day. I know without a doubt that I'm doing something positive by spending time with these fellows. I leave every volunteer shift feeling really good about my efforts at the shelter. That, along with the stress relief I experience, is what keeps me coming back. And I cannot advocate enough for working at the shelter. It's really given me an enormous amount of stress relief and joy to work with dogs. So many of us, when we're feeling stressed or overloaded, we err on the side of working more instead of less. I mean, we become workaholics. We want to overwork to compensate. Our brains and bodies just don't have time to rest if we're overcompensating by putting more hours in. Instead of being addicted to working, get obsessed with volunteering. It changes your stress-addled brain by increasing activity in the structures of the brain that create pleasure, while decreasing activity in regions of the brain responsible for stress. I mean, how's that for a heck of a 1-2 punch? So it seems counterintuitive to suggest volunteering as medicine for your daily routine, like you're adding more work on top of the mountain you're currently trying to climb. But lending a hand to others in need gives you back so much more than you give. You'd be surprised how much time you have for things you actually enjoy doing. The average person has 4 to 6 hours of free time a day. Multiple studies have found this to be true, and this stat seems high, but if you really think about it, you have more time in the day than you think. That means that the average person has anywhere from 28 to 42 hours of free time a week. That's a whopper of a number. Granted, a lot of that time is spent with your family or running errands or cleaning house. But even if you scale that number back drastically, at the very least, you have a couple of hours a week to potentially volunteer. Being a regular volunteer doesn't require you to commit enormous amounts of time every week or even month. Start small. There are multitudes of daily, weekly, and even monthly volunteer opportunities like working with ESL learners, carrying and cuddling cats at the shelter, or just taking care of your neighborhood parks and spaces. But to really reap the stress relieving, burnout crushing rewards of volunteering, it does help to integrate it into your regular routine. You might not be able to commit to every day or every week, but I bet once a month is within your reach. Sometimes that little bit of volunteering every week or every month becomes a reward. It's something that your brain and your body look forward to. It's a bit of a relief and a positive mind shift for me to put on my hiking boots and my fanny pack and get my leash ready, my treats, to get ready for volunteering with dogs at the shelter. It's the signifier to my brain and my body that, all right, slap work off your brain. Get ready. You're going to go do something fun, meditative, useful, helpful, and just nice feeling. You have work, families, pets. Everyone has a ton of commitments. It can be hard to balance everything that's going on in your life. When you feel like you're juggling a lot of balls, you can't keep track of what's due tomorrow, what's happening this weekend. It can all feel a bit much. Your responsibilities become a strain, and they start to feel like a weight just hanging over your head, waiting to drop. In times like these, and again, it feels counterintuitive, it's actually helpful to set aside space in your hectic schedule for volunteering. It provides that needed perspective. It's a moment of calm that you need to calibrate your brain to handle all of life's challenges. Statistically, only 74% of our work is done during normal working hours. We take more than a quarter of our work home with us. Of that quarter we take home, 71% happens before or after on the workday, while 29% happens on the weekends. We are not making great use of our workday or our free time. That doesn't help our psyche either. You know what you could be doing with that time outside of work instead of working? Yeah, you guessed it, volunteering. If you take just 2 hours a week away from the work that's already overstepping your work-life balance, and you apply that to volunteering, you've already allotted 8 hours a month to serving your community. That's 8 hours you're not looking at work email, 8 hours you're not thinking about tomorrow's meeting schedule, 8 hours you're doing something really, really good that your kids can learn from, 8 hours you're not dwelling on the work or the personal crap that just bubbles up and ruins your day. Setting aside that time to volunteer regularly can really help deter and alleviate feelings of stress and burnout. This isn't just anecdotal or my personal opinion. This is science. Research shows that you could live longer, healthier, happier lives if you volunteer. A 5-year study in Detroit found that stressful events appear to take a greater toll on people who are less helpful to others. But helping others seemed to erase the detrimental physical effects of stressful experiences. I think the message is pretty clear here. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that one of the best anti-anxiety medications is generosity. The great thing about showing up for other people, though, is it doesn't have to cost anything at all, and it ends up being beneficial to you and to the recipient. So instead of stewing on work, compounding your rising stress levels, take time out to get involved with a cause that speaks your language, that you're interested in, you feel passionate about. Now that I've convinced you all that volunteering is one of the best things you can do for yourself to combat burnout, to live a longer and healthier life, let's talk about how to get started. I mean, you're in, right? I hope so. I think I've made a compelling argument. With just a little bit of research and planning, along with a little bit of an open-minded mentality, you can find the volunteer gig of your dreams. Choosing where to volunteer isn't a difficult task. It just takes a little introspection and research. Think about what might be a good fit for you. A weekly or a monthly time frame? Do you want to serve animals or people? Do you want to volunteer by yourself, or maybe you have friends who want to get involved as well? Take that to the internet, find some good options, and then dive in. You'll probably need just a bit of training to start, but then you'll be off to the races. Do some soul searching. What interests you? What causes do you already donate money to? Tapping into those intrinsic interests will give you a good starting point for more research. Keep in mind the potential benefits of volunteering for a specific organization as well. For instance, don't volunteer at the animal shelter. Cleaning up after pets or dealing with potential behavior issues will create more stress for you. Likewise, if you really like spending time with your older relatives, look into a senior supporting volunteer role. And above all, be honest about what you can do. If you can only commit 1 hour a month right now, that's okay. Don't focus your effort on an organization that needs regular weekly help. Once you get started, you can always up the ante if you're craving more. So there are tons of different volunteer opportunities. Nonprofits often have opportunities, and if you live in an urban area, nonprofits are plentiful. Some great ideas include animal shelters and rescue orgs, seniors, foster care, people experiencing homelessness, parks or public space maintenance, political organizations, underprivileged youth, public health organizations, and similar. The sky and your internet searching skills are the limit here. It's time to put that research hat on, get going. You can volunteer at your local animal shelter or rescue org, which is a personal favorite of mine since I keep talking about it. Often they run almost completely on volunteer support, so your assistance is really needed. If you want to work with seniors, there are organizations like Meals on Wheels, which actually has many types of positions, not just food delivery. There's elder helpers or the National Council on Aging. Also consider volunteering at a senior center or in an assisted living facility. Organizations like CASA and Together We Rise provide a lot of options for helping out foster kids, including foster or adopt. Children's hospitals are usually looking for fun people to brighten up a kiddo's day as well, so that's a good place to look. If you want to donate your time in the pursuit of public health, try a local hospital or hospice, a homeless shelter, community garden, maybe even a blood bank or a school. Ask people you know as well. They may be involved in something really cool that you aren't aware of. Another thing to consider is whether the company you work for matches donations or volunteer hours with a contribution of their own. For instance, the parent company of Magento, Adobe, does 100% matching on all donations that I make to charitable organizations. But they also donate a certain amount of money per hour of volunteering. All I have to do is track my volunteer hours in their internal tool. So far, I've spent thousands of dollars. I've sent thousands of dollars to my favorite local Austin nonprofits using this Adobe benefit. It's been really awesome, and I'm super thankful that Adobe does this. It's really helped me support organizations that I care a lot about. If an organization you want to volunteer for qualifies for any of these benefit programs, this may be a deciding factor for you because it maximizes your impact. It's really a double whammy. Lots of impact, you get your volunteer on, you feel good about yourself. It's a win-win for everyone. So getting going with a volunteer org is usually pretty easy. After you consider the factors, you do some soul searching, you pick an organization or 3 that you're interested in. It's time to sign up. Typically, you can express interest via their website or by sending them an email. Based on what you learn, decide which opportunity may be best fit for you. You'll likely go through an info session or a training before being unleashed into the volunteer world. So start volunteering, then keep volunteering. I have a comment from Stacy. This points out that when it comes to volunteering, we have to check in with ourselves to make sure we are not headed for burnout or saying yes too much. 100%, Stacy. I mean, like I said before, I've been there. I continue to put myself in those positions because I want to make a good impact. I want to do good things. But you're right. We can't do good things for others if we're not in an okay place ourselves. You got to take care of yourself while you're helping others. Don't say yes to too much, or you'll get burnout from volunteering, which defeats the purpose. So Mr. Rogers had many, many wise words for us, including these, which I think illustrate the idea of volunteering for your community very, very well. All of us at some time or other need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. In our own way, each of us is a giver and a receiver. I love Mr. Rogers. So I see volunteering as a coping mechanism for life. It helps me, it helps the people or animals I'm serving, it helps my community, and hopefully, through some compounding wave of influence, it helps the world. And I can't promise volunteering will fix all of your problems at work or completely eliminate your burnout, but I can guarantee that you will be thankful that you gave it a go. While volunteering helps me beat back that burnout, it also gives me a sense of real purpose that spending my day writing technical documents just doesn't. Sometimes it helps me turn my discomfort into gratitude for the volunteer experience and for being alive in this zany world, which is all the more zany right now, as you all know. So harkening back to our hero Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. You hear this quote a lot, but I think it's because it's so true and so on point and so poignant for us. Start a chain reaction of compassion in your circle. Spread the idea of community service, personal growth, real self-care to your friends, your family, your colleagues, and your neighbors. Create a new habit that you can lean on when times are tough. Like now, hello, COVID-19. We're all just humans trying to survive and thrive on this whirling gob of rock in the sky. Don't let burnout kill your life vibe. So thank you. Now go volunteer and say hello. I've added some links here, and of course I'm happy to send this presentation out to everyone as well. So I want to open the floor for any more questions or comments or personal experiences that you want to share or talk about.
This is Jack. In Orange County STC, Teresa Avigienis got her first technical writing job by volunteering to write the chapter newsletter. She was working as an industrial engineer and wanted to move into tech writing. So she took that on as her first project, and since the newsletter was online, somebody saw it and offered her a job just by volunteering.
Yeah, that's awesome. Actually, I've met several people through my volunteer gigs who started out as volunteers and really found their passion. And you know, they weren't tech writers, but they switched to actually working for some of these nonprofit organizations because it fulfilled them so much, and they got so much out of it. I prefer, you know, I love to write every day, and I love to be a technical writer, so I probably wouldn't take that route. But it really just illustrated what spending time doing volunteering can help you with. Cindy, what do you say? People you volunteer with can also be good references if you were doing something related to your career. Absolutely. Absolutely. So for instance, I'm a co-organizer for the Write the Docs Austin here with Margaret. I kind of got roped into that gig by my previous boss and mentor, who was also a co-organizer of Write the Docs. I think she thought, hey, I could get this girl to help. Turns out I just continued helping, and here we are, which also got me into doing these kinds of things for conferences and for other events. So you're right, Cindy, absolutely. And I think that also goes back to Jack's presentation. You know, if you're having a gap in your resume, it might be advantageous for your career to start volunteering. I mean, you can put that on a resume as something that you're really spending good time with and applying your efforts and skills towards. So it's a good idea. Thanks, Cindy.
Sorry, I was going to put in a shameless plug for volunteering with STC South Central Texas. But yeah, we can use as many volunteers as are willing. We're the admin council, but usually there's not really an election. It's just like one candidate for each position. So you have a really good shot at getting a spot on the admin council. And we'd love to have any of you. And I think most of the positions we have can be done virtually. The only one I'd like to have that would be local would be a photographer for our events. But for the other stuff, for social media and things like that, you don't have to live anywhere near here.
Good plug. I co-sign. Go volunteer. Anyone else want to share? Have any more questions? Sorry, my presentation was a little bit shorter than it seems like a lot of people's were, but I was hoping we'd have some good questions related to this.
I also volunteer with Memorial Assistance Ministries. They do a lot in Houston, and it was formerly called Literacy Advance, and they merged with them, but they teach English as a second language to adults only, so no kids, which is helpful. And I feel like with kids, I mean, I really admire teachers who do it, but half of them honestly don't want to be there in school. So with my adults, they all want to be there and they all want to learn. So, and if anyone wants to do that, just let me know. And I was going to say also, we can all definitely connect on LinkedIn and continue to communicate that way.
Yeah, and if any of you have any questions about how to get hooked up with a certain type of volunteer organization, or just have some general questions, you know, feel free to hit me up. I've become a proponent of volunteering. I didn't realize this was going to happen to me, but here we are. Cindy, when will the bats be back? Well, the bats will be back in Austin. Let's see, I would probably in about a month, as long as the heat comes on. They should start colonizing under the bridge again in Austin here. So everyone's looking forward to that. It's a fun twilight event. If you all aren't familiar, Austin has the largest colony of Mexican, I think it's called Mexican free-tail bats, definitely in the country, but maybe in the world. And they colonize under a bridge just south of downtown. And lots of tourists go and check out the bats, tourists and locals. It's a really fun event, but you got to be careful where you stand.
I would think so.
All right, well, I am going to stop sharing if y'all don't have any more questions. Thank you for listening.